Welcome to Timberborn and the settlement of the Skyborn. My name is Zedek, and I'm working on transforming the ancient Causeway map into a bustling skyscraper city. If you're just joining in, we are fairly early in this process. I've got a basic colony set up, and last episode we set up our first fully automated bad water diversion system. In this episode, I really want to try to get to skyscrapers as quickly as I can. So this is all going to be about doubling our economy again, doubling our population, and then hopefully getting to build our first tower. As I mentioned last episode, one of the big things we took care of was adding a new bad water diversion system. So in this map, water originates in water sources along this aqueduct line. And what we accomplished last episode is I have this diversion system now dumping bad water back over here. And the ultimate goal of that was that this now starts protecting a huge chunk of the map, so that now we can start sealing off the bad water, corralling it to different areas, and really start expanding our colony. And I think that's where I'm going to start for this episode. I want to start taking advantage of that new land that we just got access to, and then maybe starting to reclaim even more of this map. So first thing I'm going to do is get some crews over to this new quadrant of the map and starting to rip out all of these trees so we can make way for some new stuff. And we can even put down some temporary storage, just because I figure we're going to be building stuff over here anyways. And as the beavers get started on that, I am noticing we're about to go into another bad tide. So I'm actually looking forward to that. This is going to be the first time that we're going to test out the new diversion system that we've got. So if everything works out as planned, this center part of the map is going to remain pristine, and we're going to be able to dump all the bad water off of this pit here. Now, on that same thread, as the beavers start tearing out these trees and prepping the land, let's see what we can do to reclaim more buildable land. Now, this corner of the map, for example, I think is fairly easy to save. We just need to start blocking off the bad water from flowing in this direction. And that's doable right here just by blocking off this. Now, unfortunately, it is really annoying to get people back there. But as the effort to tear out all of this stuff goes, we should be able to get a road back there. The good news is, as they tear out the trees, they can use the trees they're cutting down to actually build that. So, shouldn't be too bad. And once we get all that in, we can just come over here and then seal this off. And that's going to give us the rest of this corner of the map. And as I'm starting to push more of this bad water into this one corner of the map, I'm trying to think if there's ways that I can start harnessing it. Because for the Iron Teeth, eventually we're going to get access to a bad water discharge. And that's going to allow me to maybe harness it permanently, even through droughts, for power. So this makes me wonder if I could put some water wheels down here, and then maybe we could start using some of this polluted area for industry. That way we can kind of complement our space downtown, which is kind of getting full. Now, what I'm kind of thinking here is if I could make kind of a run of water wheels down this direction, kind of the start of a zigzag pattern. The only catch is the power from this line gets kind of all mixed up. I would like to maybe seal this off here, so maybe it has to go around this area, and I can open it up and then start the beginning of that line. That would also make this kind of a holding tank for a little bit of bad water during droughts. Now, a catch with that is I do need to get beavers up here to kind of maybe seal off these holes. It is a little bit dangerous territory, but I think I can get crews in through here. Now, my plan as I come up here is to start sealing off a bunch of these edges so that I'm forcing water to go through one direction that I want it to. But I need to be careful when I do this, because I have a feeling there's a lot of flow coming through this. And as I seal these off, I need to make sure that there's actually enough edges in the area where I want the water to fall, so there's not a backlog. Otherwise, this thing is just going to overflow and then potentially hurt my beavers. So this corner right here, I think I'm okay with it falling down, especially since I'm going to dynamite some of that stuff out anyways. So I can widen this part. I don't know for sure how much CMS is in there, but I'm going to guess if I could probably get, I don't know, 3 edges, that should cover 6.6 CMS. So maybe I could get somebody here and then maybe demolish this one too. So I'd get these set of 3. Then everything else here, I'm going to try to get the crews in to seal up. Oh, and it looks like our bad tide started when they're finishing that up. Let's go take a peek to see how things are going. Well, it looks just as we planned. I can see it already starting to divert over here, and that's dumping everything down here. And I'm not seeing it back up, so that's a good sign it can handle all that flow. And as planned, our water in the center of the map is being maintained. So perfect. In that case, I can kind of forget about it and come back over here to finish up our plans. The last levee should be going in place, and with it, all the water is going to be redirected in one area. And with that, I should be able to go over here and start planning how to direct this water. Now, we're still going to need to get some beavers over here to seal off this path. That's going to at least force everything to go away from the mine. And I think in this playthrough, I'm going to play a little bit more with small water wheels. I want to see if I can come up with other ways of constructing efficient power systems with them. My other playthroughs, I've definitely all leaned into large water wheels, which are the most power efficient, but I want to see what else I can get away with these guys. Now for this stretch, I have a feeling there's under 6 CMS of flow here. So I'm going to try to redirect it into one channel to begin with. And that channel is going to be through here. But what I'm a little worried about is as I put more water wheels in here and make this zigzag pattern, it can cause overflow up at the top. So I want almost an escape hatch so that if that looks like it's going to happen, I can start letting, jettisoning water out before it starts overflowing and hurting the beavers. So to prevent that, I'm going to put kind of this escape hatch up here. And I'll set it up to say 0.9. So if things are looking bad, it will let water out. And just a walkway there should let us get access to build these other parts. And while that's going to let me build some power wheels here, it's not going to give me a ton. Because what I'm ultimately worried about, let's say that I just went through here and I built those. All this water now, all this bad water in the map, is potentially going to try to go through here. Well, it's going to go through these two areas. But let's say that I did want to reclaim this part of the map, and I want to force it through here. This is going to cause flooding, because I can guarantee that all these sources combined is going to be over 6. So before I ultimately seal off this area, I think I'm going to have to widen the river over here. And that's probably doable. I can get people over here, I can tear out all of this stuff, and then probably just lay down a few sticks of dynamite to make that wider. With this space back, let's see, how much power did we end up with? Well, roughly 178 per water wheel, but we have the potential to expand that with a lot more patterns in here. Well, we should figure out what we're going to use this new power for. There's a few things we haven't unlocked yet that I kind of want. I want a wood workshop so we can get treated planks. That will feed into unlocking mines. I want a centrifuge, so that's going to unlock better dynamite. And I'm going to want dirt, so that's going to involve getting a dirt excavator. So maybe I can fit a few of those in this space here with the power that we've got. Nothing too permanent, but enough to get us going. So I'm going to suspend everything on top of platforms, and then I'll probably be a little bit tricky and run power underneath some of them. That way I can get stuff to the other side. Also, to make use of that wood workshop, I'm going to need pine resin. And I think this little pocket back here underneath the aqueduct is going to be a good spot for some pine trees. So I'll put some pine trees in, as well as a tapper shack. And finally, I'm going to just put down some storage for all this stuff. Now, this is kind of an expensive play for us, but it is going to unlock the rest of the resources for us, so we can start at least building things that we couldn't before. So with all that queued up, let's take a look back where we started this episode, back with that new open space. I want to see how they're doing, because this is going to play into our next steps. Well, in my absence, it looks like they've done a fairly good job of starting to cut things away. In fact, some of them have finished entirely. They don't have anything else to do. Now, one of the things that we haven't quite finished is we still need these set of trees cut so we can finally get over here. Maybe I can just speed that up with them crews, and then I'll still have these guys continue to tear things out. And you can see how broken up this map is. You can see right here, I've got all this dead space that I can't use because of all this rocky terrain. But this is, right here. This is where I planted all those pine trees. So as this map progresses, I'm going to probably try to develop it a lot, like terraform it and flatten it. I do want to keep some aspects of this map as I build the city, though. For example, this aqueduct, I'm going to probably restore it. That's like a key piece of this map. I'm going to keep that along with the rebuilt city. But some of these other parts, I think, are fair game to rip out. For example, all of this, rocky terrain in here, it's just kind of wasted space, which could eventually go to a skyscraper. With those final trees taken care of, though, we should be able to get down to the very last tail end here and start blocking off this bad water. And I think I'm going to go a step farther here. While I've got access, I think it's going to make sense to just kind of cap off a little run right here. And the reason I'm going to do that is that's going to force all this bad water back over here towards where we're setting up our power plant. So you can see all this flow right here that's going off the map. That's kind of wasted. That could instead be put into something in here. It's some sort of zigzag pattern. But with this, we've got a little bit of bad water that's stagnant here. Eventually we're going to be able to flush that out. But I think what we can do is just go down all the way down here and just kind of block off this last corner of the map. And then maybe we'll just add kind of some floodgates for some overflow if something ever happens. Now, unfortunately, this is quite a long trek to get people here, so that part is annoying. But the good news is we've spent all this time chopping trees. We should be able to use all these trees that we've chopped to basically fund the construction of this. And just to make sure that's a little bit more doable, I am going to cart in some local supplies. Okay, that looks pretty well built. Now, while they were building that, we did enter into a drought, so I won't be able to flood this in for a couple days yet. But when it does, we're going to be able to reclaim this entire corner of the map. And I see that we did finish building this other diversion here. So when the wet season comes back again, we'll be able to see just how much bad water current we've got over here. Now, we still do have a good chunk of time to finish up this segment here, but in the meantime, we can probably start making room over here for our farms. And this is kind of rocky terrain. I know in other playthroughs, I've been very much about keeping the natural terrain. I'm not going to play that this one. It's artificial, it's a city. I'm going to make it look a little interesting, but I am okay if I destroy some of this terrain. So to make room for farmland, we are going to start tearing out some of this stuff. And of course, this farmland is not forever. This is just to help us grow. Ultimately, because this is a skyscraper play, I'm planning on having basically elevated farms or rooftop gardens, stuff like that. This is really just to get our population going so that we can start building that stuff. So, we've got a nice flat space to work with now. Now, before I start building though, it looks like we are, in fact, out of the drought. So let's kind of take a look to see if we can reclaim this space now. I think I did notice that we did have to fill in this final cap here. So as soon as that goes in, we should be good to go. But what we could do while they finish that up is demolish some of these little gaps here. And get that one going, and that should let us start filling everything in. Also, I want to take a look at how this bad water is diverting now. So this is the first season now that we have this fully capped off. I want to see how much flow is going through here. Wow, actually a lot more than I was expecting. In fact, we hit the safety valve over here, so I'm glad that was done, because I'm gonna guess otherwise this would have started flooding. Well, I think I need to get some crews over here and maybe widen this gap a little bit with some wider dynamite. Before I do, though, I would like to get a measure of how much water is flowing through here, though. So we can do that with a water gauge. And this is probably one of the few times I'm going to be able to take advantage of all this stuff being condensed like this. So I think really everything is going through just this one block right here. So if I put a water wheel down here, I should be able to get a decent measure of the CMS, minus whatever is being sent through this kind of little side channel. Well, this reading says 3 CMS, which that seems suspect to me. I know 3 CMS would not get up that high. I think the fact that I'm measuring on the diagonal is probably screwing up my reading. To be safe, I'm gonna guess it's probably 6 CMS. Say like 3 CMS here, 3 CMS here, because I think it's probably double what we're seeing on this one gauge. If that's the case, me just widening this channel right here a little bit should fix this backflow problem. Let's see if this helps. So we should have a much better flow going down, and if all works, these water wheels should reverse direction. And I can see their power slowly starting to ramp up. So that's a good sign. Still not as much as I would like it, so I'll probably come in here and then just put another run of TNT to work on in the background. And you might notice over here that we've got our dirt excavator stalled out. That's because we're still blocked on treated planks. You see, treated planks, they need pine resin. Pine resin is over here, but it's blocked on these trees becoming mature. So we've got maybe another 7 days, another cycle or so before they start producing anything. But other than that, this wet season has brought back basically all of this quarter of the map. All of this is nice, secure, and protected. So I think it's time to start filling it in with some farmland. I want to start scaling the population, so for that, I think I'm going to be eyeing corn. Now, my roads here are an absolute mess, and that's because I've just been using whatever I could. So let's maybe straighten some of these up a bit. And, you know, at some point, we are going to come back here and replace a lot of this with tubeways. So I'm thinking we're going to need 2 farms to be able to run most of this, and we're going to plop 2 of them in here and make this all corn. And we're going to need some way to actually process corn. So I think what I'm going to do is make our first generator, or our first engine. We have enough resources for it, and we can probably burn some of our excess wood, and we can use that to power our first food factory, along with some storage to hold it all. And I think I'm going to splurge finally for our first set of large warehouses. And one of them is going to hold the raw food, and the other one's going to hold the processed stuff. Not the most efficient place to put it on the map, but it's going to give us headroom to keep growing the population. Which is good, because I see we've got a lot of vacancies, so we really do need to start growing. In fact, let's take a look at our breeding pods. We might be able to put down a couple more. Ultimately, I'd like to work our way up to advanced breeding pods, but those still need treated planks, which we don't have yet. So I think we're still stuck with a few more regular breeding pods. I'm going to have to find a new place to put these. And I have to be very careful. As I'm adding these, I need to keep track of our food and our water. Because I don't have a ton of storage of water, I can reach a state where I very quickly deplete it if I have too large of a population. Now, with all this empty space that we've got here, ultimately I do want to continue to develop it, but I don't have that population for it. I think, kind of as a middle ground, I'm going to put down a couple foresters and just plant trees in every kind of square inch that I can. Now, eventually I'll probably have to cut these trees down, but this will at least give me some construction material for later game. So I'll just plan on everything that they can get their paws on being a form of oak tree. Now, I might come to regret this later because it's going to be a pain to tear all this stuff out, but we'll see. Next up on my mind, I want to get ahead of our water problem. Just as this population continues to boom, I'm trying to think of a good place to put additional water storage. Well, I know I could replace both of these medium tanks with one large tank here. I think that will be a good use. Now, one of these large tanks, I think, is maybe 5 medium tanks, so it's probably worth swapping 2 of these here. But I'm also thinking of expanding our pumping operation as we continue to grow. And, you know, this area down over here might be a good spot for it. I'll have to tear out a couple of mangroves, but I'm thinking this is a deep pond, so we could pump through longer droughts. So maybe let's rip this stuff out, and then maybe we can make kind of a suspended platform over here. And from the suspended platform, we should be able to position some pumps as well as areas to hold those tanks. Okay, that should kind of do the trick. And thankfully, this is really close to our homes too, so the beaver should be able to run back and forth to the large tank very quickly. I want to move on to our next things. First off, you'll probably notice that our water isn't looking so great. In fact, we're almost at the tail end of this drought, and we ended up eating up into our supply. That's a good sign that our little piddly dam is nowhere near enough for what we need. The second thing is, I really want to get to a more reliable source of power, because you'll notice that the construction effort here is completely stalled out, because we don't have planks. Now, for that, we're going to be eyeing a bad water dome, so I could open this. But a bad water dome to cap this off is going to require a lot of metal. And you've been probably noticing that I am running out of ruins on this map to collect. You can see I've got some here, but I still do have a good chunk here and there that I could use. But in the background, I do want to eye actually making a mine, so I have a more efficient, source of it. The only catch is that mines are super expensive for treated planks. So this is probably going to be a background play for us. So that makes me think that the two things I should be prioritizing next is just using the metal I can scavenge to get a dome on this, and just starting to invest in a bigger water supply. Well, between those, let's see, I'm not going to have a chance to build this until probably the next drought, so that is okay. But what I can do is I can prep this area to get ready to rush in there and build it. So for that, maybe what I could do is just make sure the builders have some supplies carted up here and ready to go for when the next drought appears. So I'll plan on that. And, well, I guess for now then, let's invest in increasing the height of this dam. Now this dam, even if I were to build it tall, it's not particularly useful, to be honest, because it's just not that big. Really, what I could start eyeing is to extend it in this direction. I just have all this really gnarly terrain. I think this is an area where I can invest in that new extract and dynamite. I'm going to start maybe flattening this, and then we can start extending the dome and building it upward. With all this space cleared out, we're going to be able to build a much bigger dam. And at the same time, with that mountain range gone, it's going to give us much better access to this other half of the map. So let's get the rest of this kind of figured out. I think what we can build is a giant retaining wall around all of this. I'm thinking here that I'm going to extend this wall all the way down here, through here once those trees are cut, and then probably somewhere up to here. So that's going to give us a much wider dam. Now the outflow of this dam is probably going to be through here. We'll rebuild a set of sluice gates. Now the really annoying part with this dam is probably going to be building upward. Now I want to continue constructing higher and higher, and that is going to be a little tough to reach in all the different areas. I can probably help some of that by starting construction in a few different areas. So this over here should give me some access point. So maybe we can target another stairwell over here too. Yeah, this is going to be a bit of a massive undertaking given the size of our colony right now. But I think it's worth it given that we're starting to struggle with those droughts. And this is where that earlier investment into the oak trees is going to come into play. I see they're just starting to mature, so we should be able to cut a bunch of these and just turn around and dump them into the dam construction. Now, temporary flooding aside, I think this is going to give us more water for those droughts. Now, ultimately, I would like to get this dam higher and higher. If I could, I would like it all the way up to the top to match these aqueducts. Now, one challenge with that is you can see I've got this gap here. To get that working, I'd have to actually tear out some of these natural overhangs and replace them with something much shorter. So I can lay down some of the levees around the border with that in mind, but we're not actually going to be able to take advantage of it until probably a nice long drought. I really don't have a pressing need to have this dam higher right now, so I'm just going to put everything to deal with building it just as kind of a low priority. What I do want to do is take a look back at our industry though. And you can see over here, I did add a couple of explosives factories, and I paused some of these other buildings that we didn't need. Mainly because of the dirt excavator. I didn't want it sucking up all those treated planks. Now, as for the next two things that I want to build, I still do want to build a cover here, but I'm still lacking on metal blocks. So I think one of the things I'm going to do is, over here, I'm going to temporarily destroy this lumber mill, and I just want to increase our metal production a little bit more, as much as I can. The only downside for doing this is that this isn't really a great area for those materials. So what I could probably do is just add some really tiny warehouses here, with haulers that are prioritized to both bring in materials and haul them out to the larger storage areas. While I'm waiting for all those metal blocks to be made, though, there are two small things I'd like to fit in. And I think this is going to be the start of some of our early skyscrapers. You'll notice two problems I've got. One, I've got a lot of homeless beavers. So I think that's going to be a good opportunity to keep adding some more stories to our giant residential district. The other thing I'm not happy is you'll notice I'm hitting the peak of some of my storage. So I think there might be room for a mini storage tower somewhere in here. Not something permanent, but something we can use for early game. So let's start with our residential district. I put this in last episode, and it should be easy to just keep on stacking upwards. I think I'm going to add 2 more stories to this thing. Not quite a skyscraper, but it's our beginnings of one. Only downside with doing this is I'm going to be sucking up more of our platforms as I continue to add more amenities here. As the building gets higher and higher, it also gets harder and harder to see what's going on. Okay, I think I've managed to get everything connected now. And you can see I'm just going through and doing a sanity check and making sure that there's an entryway to each of the doors. And I even added a few scratchers and medical beds in here just to make use of all the amenity space I can. This is turning out to be one of our first tall structures, which is good. I really want to get to this part of the game where I can start building actual towers. Now, as I mentioned, the other problem I want to take care of is storage. And I'm wondering if I can fit in a better storage tower somewhere. You can see right now, our main storage is kind of next to this industrial center, and it's tough to keep going high. And in fact, I don't really want to go much higher here, because at some point, I'm going to restore this aqueduct. And if I have a giant storage tower right here, I'm ultimately going to have to tear it down. I'm wondering if I can maybe shift something and have it kind of hang over part of our growing area, kind of off the edge of this cliff. Well, let's see. I can destroy the inventor huts to make some space, and then maybe I can tear out a couple of these trees just so I can figure out how I'm going to build this thing. And this will be a little disruptive to production, but I am going to take down all of this stuff, which thankfully we should get most of those materials back. Okay, so I think with all of this cleared out, I can then add some of those platforms just hanging over the farm, and now I've got a much bigger space to work with. And it's going to be kind of tricky to get all these buildings in here. And I'm going to try not to be too clever with it. I don't have a lot of resources to mess around with anything too wild and crazy. So I'm thinking I'm just going to do kind of a standard spiral staircase in the middle of this construction. Something like that should get us started. And I should be able to continue to stack additional one of these large piles here. In fact, I should probably even prioritize this over the home construction, because I think until we actually have the storage, the beavers can't access all these materials I have just laying on the ground. So as soon as we kickstart this, it should just speed up everything else. Net, this is very close to what we started with, maybe with a few extra of these, but we do have 3 large warehouses in here, so I'm happy about that. Let's go check on our tower over here. Well, pretty good. And how are we doing on metal? 114. Overall okay. Building these platforms did eat into our supply, which is continuing to hold off building that dome, but it could have been worse. I think I really did want this stuff. Now, I do see that we've got a drought planned in about 1.3 days, so that's really going to give us an opportunity to see how this new dam holds out. I'm honestly not sure. What I might do when this gets triggered is I might seal off this part of the river, and that's because all of this map is going to be a really massive draw on this dam. I mean, it's bigger than what we had, but really I want only the part that the beavers are in, and maybe our farmland. That's the part I care about. There's no point really me keeping all of this irrigated, when we don't have a ton of production over there. Maybe late game we can start doing some crazy things with more storage. Other than that, things are looking pretty good. I don't want to mess a ton with the build queue, but one thing I do want to do is re-add some breeding pods. So remember when I destroyed all of this, I used to have 3 breeding pods in there, so I'm just going to put down 3 of them to replace the ones I destroyed. And that might be an interesting idea for a future tower. Be kind of interesting to have all these stacked up from the outside. And here comes that drought. What do we have? 7 days? I think we should be able to do that. I am going to close these floodgates, though. I just want to see, as a trial, what 7 days draw on this dam will do with only maintaining the colony part. Now, the other thing I want to do is I need to make sure that I don't have a flow of water happening during the dry season. And what I mean by that is, you see how at the end here, I've got these water wheels and they end with these floodgates? These floodgates are going to be configured at a particular height, say like 0.8 height right here. And over here, I need these sluice gates to be letting out water. And kind of a failure scenario would be if I say put this to say 0.9 or 0.85. Because what's going to happen is this dam down here is going to be letting water out at 0.8 height, and the sluice gate is going to try to drain the dam to get to 0.85, which it will never be capable of doing. Now, I think if they're both equal, you know, they should stabilize, given that the sluice gate may have a little bit of a delay. But I think that's the case. We'll just have to make sure. But if it does work as I expect, we should see these compact water wheels come to a close. Now, unfortunately, even with these at the same height, I am still noticing that I'm getting a little bit of flow here. These things are opening and closing just a little bit. And you can see already in the first day, we've lost a full layer to the dam as a result. You know, I think I have to be a little bit more aggressive with having these not be the same. I'm going to close this when the downstream depth is above 0.7. And that should make it so that it's never going to be able to meet this condition to drain stuff. Yeah, now I can see they are all consistently closed. And we are out of power. One thing I'm going to change is now that we have engines, I don't think we need a manual power wheel anymore. We can go ahead and replace that. This is again going to be eating into our metal supply, and I should really stop doing that until we have that dome. But if it will help us get through the dry season a little bit more, well, it's probably worth it. What I will do during this drought, though, is I'm going to pause our number cruncher. We have more than enough science. I really don't need it. And that will at least leave what we've got for our rest of our production. Well, we're about halfway through the drought, and it looks like our dam isn't doing the best. And that's partially my fault, because you'll notice that I've got this divider in here, which is a callback to the first baby small dam that we had. So if I destroyed that, I should get a little bit of water back. We should at some point come back here and dynamite this to be a little bit deeper. But still, not a great showing for like, what, the 4 days that we've had so far? Probably the biggest draw, given that we're not actually dumping stuff off the edge of the map, it's probably going to be our pumping. Because otherwise, nothing is flowing here. So we do have this large water tank, which is almost getting topped off. And, you know, now that I look at it, we're definitely getting close to 100 beavers. So our water draw is inching up there. And as that dry season comes to a close, it looks like we ended up with only about half a layer left. So I'm actually pretty happy that we managed to get that dam in time, because if it wasn't present, we probably would have run out of water in this season. But I don't like ending it that close either, so I am happy that we put these extra 2 layers in. You can see that the beavers have been working on their off time, so we are seeing some of it. So I'm thinking next episode, we should probably get this finished up and built up too. But I think we're at a good stopping point for this episode. I think we got a lot done. I mean, we managed to reclaim this entire quarter of the map. We've got corn going in. We've got a lot of food stockpiled. We've now got this massive dam. We've got power coming from Badwater now. And we even started to build our first skyscraper. I think what makes this map difficult is not so much the droughts or the Badwater. It's just really rocky terrain to work with. So as we start unlocking more dynamite as well as eventually the excavator, it's really going to allow us to start taming this land and start building more and more bigger structures. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and as always, I hope to catch you next time.